I mí feabhar 2012 chálann tíorseo duine gan na heisteoirí bhvisisiúla agus ildánach len Arlín nuair a chuaigh David Kelly ar tlí na féidirne agus a gábhlíonn le cos an cheir a scór. Fear a bhí uasal deismireach a cha 3 scór bliain ar stáitse go Scoile, fear glín agus 4 eisteoir carachtar.
He was so completely original that whatever part he was playing, you just took him as that.
Minimalism. It's a régan na dhéon sé éanaí. An aig agus na súla agus an glór, you know, bhí sé go léir ann.
The one thing that all actors strive for and very few of us actually achieve, he had truth. He placed himself into each moment that he was acting.
Bhí sé siúráilte ina chéirt. Bhí sé réig, bhí sé olamh, rinne sé chuid oibre agus duine sé bhaile.
I just think he was one of life's really gifted actors. He was put on this planet to act.
Blacliach go smir about David Kelly. Tha sé ar stáitsin géití a gí se hocht, agus dólam sé cheir is go leisteoireachta Aurchlan na Manisteach. Bhí sé faoi dheasa ag an stáitse ón tús.
I remembered the excitement of being in this darkened building and the curtain going up, and that image has never left me, the curtain going up on this brilliant, gem-like colour from the stage.
Shall we sound him? I think he will stand very...
Thosa David I cothú slí bheithe dó hain, ag lech apáirt since na mór léireú cháin ar mhór stáití bhla clia. Agus le brechan na telefíse a dús na seascadaí in éidean, bhí sé ar ghuinig na heisteoirí cumasacha Aurchlaníochta a d'oibre in Rámí ar RTE.
We're going to turn your man here into a good, holy, pious and God-fearing Roman Catholic.
In the very early 60s, we did lots of very good dramas. You performed without the advantage of editing machines or anything, so if anything happened, you had to go back to the beginning. It was just so exciting because we were all sort of starting together, cameramen, actors, directors, everything else. We were all brand new. And the excitement of producing the stuff, black and white, of course.
I remember as a child watching David Kelly with Jimmy O'Dea in a programme called O'Dea's Your Man. I don't know whether I got all the humour, but I just loved his face because he was so po-faced and so straight and so sort of, you know, bemused at Jimmy O'Dea, and Mr. Roo, he used to call him.
Now there's a great gob-top with a fella to be running an engine, what?
I know O'Shaughnessy is a highly conscientious class of a man, and he's extremely meticulous, Mr. Roo.
Jimmy was a colossus. He wasn't very tall, but he was a giant, and it was a great honour working with him in that series very early on. The lines came as a surprise to a lot of us most of the time. He would ad-lib a little, and so would I. And we did it in Studio 3, which is a very tiny studio. So the microphone was stuck in the loaf. People used to ask, why do you never cut the loaf? Well, the mic was... That's perfectly true. The mic was stuck in the loaf, you see? You could hear the wheat germ eating away there.
I suppose that's why after that you all called him his nibs.
His nibs. Oh, God, yes.
Ach, ba ghuiread dá chrí an stáitse riamh, agus ba ag Aurchlan an Pike a chaise ar dús le cosle a chrí, máthid a bhirt cluine, agus a bhean chéile le hos cén lechiad blian, Laurie Morton.
Well, he was the toy boy, and there's a great story. They were never formally introduced. Mum was working on a play with another actor who had to step out, and Dad was brought in. So suddenly one day this seat was filled, and there was this man who was constantly complaining. He had an ulcer, and my mother said to him, "Oh God, well, I wouldn't marry you anyway." And she said, "You'll be always moaning, I wouldn't marry you." And he said, "Well, manners to wait till you're asked, madam." And of course he did ask her a number of years later. So 51 years.
Well, I mean, there are an awful lot of early memories of growing up. The interesting ones in terms of what Dad was up to with being backstage in the Gaiety during pantomimes and seeing that world from a perspective that other people wouldn't get to see, which is hugely exciting.
At home, he was just constantly with a script in hand, out sunbathing, which to Dad would have been sleeves rolled up to his elbows and maybe his collar slightly looser than normal, and a cigarette. But always a script, always working.
But Scully Helifisha na Bretana dús a haring David Clugus Call hain is rahan na green eigsula. In a mask parts Albert Riddle, Mies Nitzer Le Lovach, Satra Robin's Nest. Agus Quino for Gidzo or a forts Mar O'Reilly, on Togali Amadach, Sadara Clor, The Faulty Towers.
These look good. Now, will you get on with it? Look. This lot here, an hour and a half. This one, easy, lick a paint, 1 hour.
At the time, it was a very, very small job. It was a small little part. And Faulty Towers wasn't very popular when it was first shown. But it just took off.
People still think of him as Orally, the builder. I think he was amazed, though, that, you know, there was so much attention paid to it. But it was a great series, hysterical. He loved it.
Oh, don't smile.
Mr. O'Reilly?
Well, to be perfectly honest, Mrs. Faulty, I like a woman with spirit.
Oh, do you? Is that what you like?
I do.
Oh, good.
Now, Sybil, that's enough.
Come on, then, give us a smile.
I was on for 9 minutes. 55 years on stage and 9 minutes and 40 hours, and it'll be on my gravestone.
I've seen better organised creatures than you running round farmyards with their heads cut off. Now, collect your things and get out.
The handshake gomor le Winter Hassan, the handshake leschen lochtéis, leschen lochtwechen, agus nirav manager for ein ahruien of fein, nirav ein sort of paddy whackery or cropology schulige vishe maravishe, agus the handshake log.
Vi tór David Assassina, agus teshkurabana vi anobid, chasha kudwa amas na shaskadi geshachtadi a tashtil. It's a hachkunim la clia agus London. Tiva mo ganobud, vi she eiske gele don kahu.
Some of the stories I remember as being fairly out there. Oh, he lived the life.
The vis fein agus Dave a gober de London ag an amgéna. The vi mis de golden i chéle agus viaring Irias. Agus bené stoch an kangel bevo vi agwing goramer Treshan on Locht Kiana a chahav amach.
As he said himself, he entered the Smirnoff Book of Records and decided that it was a good idea to stop it. And he hadn't had a drink for 40 years.
She said, it would be great to look back on the days when we were always pissed, if we could remember them. So.
Or Scully na héid in the smoo and yacha David Kelly a gyan lochtfechen in the tira in Iza Gochtu in the Leiru the Rashers Tierney and Gublachan Truach in Strumpet City le Jim Plunkett.
Will you stop looking at his shaggin' majesty and beg me?
What name was that?
Rashers Tierney.
And who in God's name christened you Rashers?
A little woman did. A little woman beat the name of my lord that lived in Chandler's Court. I came to her when I was a baby.
Vi sé chotrú bhéalach, vi gach duine I gol I breanhar sin. Vi sé chodáí de hiic sé an fát. Chola me gur léise Jim Plunkett. Héis go an leabhar léo vi dosa agus dúirt sé leis. If you're ever doing that testing wim, Rashers a dhéana. Agus háidir sé buchas a dé.
Rashers Tierney would have to be my favourite role. He was 49 years of age, going on 50 when he played that, which is absolutely extraordinary.
I personally think it's the best performance, certainly TV performance, of his life.
Rashers was a joy, a dream come true.
Good day.
And with Rashers we hit on something that was absolutely right, was the sheer dignity of the man, despite the rags. And that worked.
In Janjo neve tuffe geminnig aboard Shansko the Edenach a glorige telefische, wie een hailer David Hain as a vegleiste gepekach fashionta.
I have never, ever seen David Kelly casually dressed. Never, never, never without a bow tie, never without a tie pin, never without his handkerchief in his pocket. Everything was coordinated, but there would always be this panache.
I know his father was a very proper dresser and always the pressed shirt and the good suit, but Dad certainly was a little flash.
Oh no, that was Dad, absolutely. Even when he was ill in the last few months, he was still wearing shirts with cufflinks and bow ties.
He thought denim was the work of the devil, and he died never ever having had a pair of jeans.
Léir sé character le stíl gléiste a bhís nasta I bort san classí Sylvie Dolan I Glenroe, agus bhí alán roiarcanna ag le tíosí, léirithe ag dlúchara agus cólachaí áirclanna leis, Maureen Toll.
Did the business arrive in the post yet?
You mean the divorce?
The decree nisi.
David Kelly was a great, great friend of mine, and I loved working with him. I originally started in the theatre with him in Hugh Leonard plays, the odd show in the Gaiety, for instance. I can't remember them. There's so many of them, you know. And then of course ending up with the Glenroe.
Hello, girls.
David would sort of waft around the set. He didn't so much walk as waft everywhere. And everybody loved him, and women in particular. But himself and Toll, it was just a double act, you know. I mean, the two of them had such history together and such fun together.
Working with him in Glenroe was the joy I knew it would be. And it was just great fun. I mean, we used to drive people mad. And people say, what are those two up to now?
Vi grown umtachan, you know, Ishel, you know, brave, subdued, honor,
Industrial estate, and you saw 3 men breaking into a factory.
Call the guards.
Say the phones had been disconnected.
Well, if they can't afford to pay the phone bill, there's hardly going to be anything worth nicking.
He could bend a line. He would find humour in the slightest pause, little touch of the head. And actually it would be so subtle that you'd be in stitches laughing and you couldn't say why, but he's just had the capacity to make you laugh.
I tackle them. How? With an iron bar.
Get stuck into the 3 of them, would you?
Yeah. No. I mean, I suppose the stun going to be out of the question.
I must say I miss the wit. I remember a friend of mine reminded me recently of going out to meet her to go and see a movie one Saturday night, and I was all dolled up. And without looking up, he said to me, "You do realise George Clooney isn't able to see you, Miriam?"
Bhí an dúil ag David Kelly I gcúrsaí Alíonna, painter agus calligraphy gon chéad sco a bhí an.
He had been an illustrator as his only real job, and he painted all his life. He was actually a very, very good painter. He'd had a couple of exhibitions. We have the biggest private collection of David Kellys in the world at home. But yeah, I mean, really quite an accomplished painter.
And he just loved art. If you met him for a coffee in town, it was always either after the National Gallery or before the National Gallery. Or if I was working in London, I would meet him for a coffee. He'd say, "I'll meet you in the Portrait Gallery. There's a beautiful portrait of," you know, it was always around fitting in an exhibition at the Tate or something like that.
In Yanyon Gura Gairi Gamala, Sharon Scolan War agus Berg, Land David a Gober Stacha, and it's a Bansalish a there.
Now, he enjoyed film and television, but his absolute life was the stage.
I first saw David acting in The Gate. You just saw this minutely framed monster of competence standing on the stage, this exquisite actor.
Tá sam an chéad uair a bhí me gobar leis, nídeag nócha. Homer chamcót timpeall na Státaí. Bhí mar I dhéanamh the Playboy the Western World. Agus bhí sé I dhéanamh páirt Old Mahon. Agus nuair a chola me go raibh sé an chuine sin na dhéanamh, well, ceap me go raibh siad crackáilte, cean fá, a mé dig an ná bíon an tord cuma an duine a dhéanamh Old Mahon go duine fiochhar mór. Agus dar nó ní duine mór a fiochhar David Kelly, tá sé hathaní sin. Ach bhí sé sin thar bár fad, agus hahan an fáirt go mór leis.
Finish your booze now and get to your bed. Go on with this drivel in the morning. Or leave us at that. Leave us at that.
Beckett was hugely important. The fact that he was the first to do Krapp's last tape the way it should have been, a man listening to tapes of himself that had been recorded 30 years ago.
Gooseberries, she said. I said again I thought it was hopeless and no good going on, and she agreed, without opening her eyes.
His performance in Krapp's last tape of the gate is still one of my favourite. The truth of him, the capacity to demonstrate his own heart in everything he did was just glorious.
I mean, it's the story of an old man listening to a tape he made 30 years ago. It was all a bit close to home, you see that? And I just adore it. It's a wonderful, I think it's, for my money, the most important of his plays.
He was a great expert in pain. He knew, I think, like, there was depths to David that none of us have ever seen, because some of the stuff that he played, you can see that he was very, very acquainted with the darker side of life, the less jolly and witty side of life than the one he showed us. But he had to have known it, because when the parts called for it, he just did it so beautifully, and it was so real. It was mined from the depth of experience, I think.
Perhaps my best years are gone, when there was a chance of happiness.
You can have luck, but it doesn't last forever unless you can support that by talent and by skill, and both of those he had in droves.
A penny for the poor old man.
He was a pure character actor, young or old. It didn't matter what age he was playing. He was absolutely in character.
But fi gachrod ige, fi an paked omlán ige. Fi magnaige her dús. Fi sin an líos teach the script agus na príomhvochel, na príomhsmuinti, an rhythm, a oil, cosúla ceoltóir.
Will you not be still? No!
Bhí sé tanní só haan an camera go mór leis, agus an cho bhí an microphone an grá I gáí le Dave.
But Oisin was a traveller. He missed his caravan, he missed all his old pals. Saddle broke.
Bhí pártna aige in neart scanán ó na seascadaí, an vicaris an Italian job in ag seascadaí na measc, ach bhlátha a híhars na pictiúr níos dearnaí in the heel. Bhí ról Santa sa chaige I Dante Gabriel Byrne, mar grandfather sa scanán Aidanach into the west in ag na Chadó.
Call the boys and jump up on the back and we'll go to the west, back to the old life.
You listen to me. Them boys are staying here. I don't want them running around the country with the arse falling out of their trousers.
He loved Into the West. He was very proud of that film. It was a great, great piece of Irish cinema. There was a lovely magical Irish thing about it.
Won't he save him, Grandpa?
Oh, me and my stupid stories.
Sweet Jesus.
Ach, bus a scanán Waking Ned a haring David Cluer hain fud fad na crunne. A hugstadas shumble gnéis do dar le Shane, nur a chonnecha se glúis roiocht gan snáhead.
It was hysterical. It's absolutely hysterical. Sex symbol at 70. Hey.
When I saw it first, I went, oh my God!
Waking Ned, when you started in that, did that make you into a bit of a sex symbol for people?
Oh,
do you
totally.
think? When you appeared naked? Yeah.
Even more so than I was before.
You didn't bat an eyelid there?
No.
Yeah. Nor should you.
Being stark naked was not a worry because I was too bloody terrified of the bike. The helmet was heavier than I am. And, you know, if you've no clothes on riding a bike, you probably wouldn't know this, but you tend to slide off.
Nuair a tháinig mé sin go chuir mé chórtaigh agus scríb mé mine eyes had seen the glory. Agus one chancel that sin.
Cyrw David yn anad dy glwyn o glwylwch fechna agus e lor chud seachtwdi Nuair a tugadh Port's Grandpa Joe, though, is gone on Tim Burton, Charlie and the Chocolate Factory.
He was so proud to have been asked to do that. Tim Burton rang him and said, look, we want you to do it, will you do it? And he said, yes, I'll do it. And he was delighted. It did something very interesting for him. Dad always shunned fame. He didn't like being recognised, except, strangely, after Charlie and the Chocolate Factory.
Mr. Wonka, I don't know if you remember me, but I used to work here in the factory.
He got a great kick out of walking down Grafton Street and sort of 4 or 5-year-olds looking up at him, wondering what Grandpa Joe was doing, you know, walking into Brown Thomas to buy a shirt.
There's a lovely story from Paul Lynham, one of our local shopkeepers, who told me his last memory of Dad was leaving the shop with cigarettes in his pocket. And as he left, hundreds of girls arrived out of the local school with iPhones going, oh my God, Grandpa Joe is here. And they were sort of filming themselves. And Dad sat down and just signed lots of autographs. And that's a lovely memory, I think, to have of him. He loved meeting kids that were happy to see Grandpa Joe.
Kegur clú agus coil round ag David. Begin an chuile. Cosúla stan Laurel. Could you go worship boss? Fi a anam agus a cheola. It's an only telephone. Near ein airs no graces ag Dave.
For David ahantas go hid an áisiúnta as ucht a chud zaibre in ivre a heels na scanán, agus for se tariscinsi dul go Hollywood freshen.
Offering an actor a 5-year contract in Hollywood, I mean, that is rather camp and rather nice. But then I thought to say no to it would be real style, and that's what I did.
As he said, I don't want to die in some hotel on a strip in California when I could be at home at the fire with a pot of tea. That's, you know, it was very simple sort of tastes that he had, really. He just loved home.
In Anion Chulantach David tugu fi rahantas do in the Chahar Ruchish Hain freshen, le Gradam Seal Aurclina, People of the Year, agus if de Brunta Ed, e Koliaki agus Cordelesh.
David Kelly.
The Lifetime Achievement thing was great because it was nice that people talked about his body of work rather than, you know, what you're being famous for this month. And I think his speech says an awful lot about how excited and how proud he was of it.
My only true desire in life, ever, was to be an actor. And it is bizarre, truly bizarre, that I'm now being rewarded for having a dream come true.
Ní raibh David Kelly as an aistear of tríomh, a chur an dára láideag feabhra gábhíle sa dóiag, gá lá ribh lá le Valentine, dag sé stáit sin tíl go nuair dhearnach agus a chláán in the himplaid.
Oh, it was an absolute shock when he passed away, yeah. We were heading up that afternoon to see him, as usual, Sunday afternoon, bringing the dog up to get him out in the wheelchair and out and get a bit of air. But he just wasn't well enough to come out, so we were actually allowed to bring Max in to see him, which was wonderful, because we weren't always together. We weren't always, all 4 of us together, visiting, so it was very timely. And he was a great actor and he made a really great exit. I think Dad would have been absolutely amazed to see, you know, Michael D, the President of Ireland. I just don't think he would have believed it. And Michael Colgan's beautiful eulogy and all sorts of people. I just don't think he would have believed just how well loved he really was.
Always happy, always generous. He was our very own sunshine boy, the gentleman of our profession.
He is, in a funny way, irreplaceable. There is nobody quite with his particular skills, his particular charm, his particular elegance.
He was just Dave Kelly, as we knew and loved. And he brought a lot of that character on stage. And this is why he was so real.
Astor dus. Balliacliach. Farchlina. Dinner den Tianaska. Den Tianayenov.
Well, I'll just remember him as a lovely guy. Yeah. A father. I couldn't have asked for a better father.
I remember him as the man who wanted a cigarette and a coffee for breakfast. Terribly, terribly bright man. And I will miss him. I'll miss him, you know.
I'd just like him to be remembered for the gentleman that he was. But as he always said himself, you know, in 100 years' time, none of us will be remembered. And Matra Dam.